Hi, I'm Roger Humphrey, and this is an introduction to sharps and flats for guitar and for ukulele. It's just an introduction. It should serve everybody very well. It can get a little more complicated, but for most of you, it won't. This will be all that you'll ever need. So let's take a look and see what we have. With a sharp or a flat, basically what we're doing is we are altering our notes a little bit. And so if we take a look at our sharp, for example, we see it kind of looks like a hashtag or a tic-tac-toe sign, but in music we refer to this as a sharp. And what we really want to do, I really want you to pay attention real close here to the center part of that, marked here in red. And we basically what we do is we read that as almost as if it were a note. So we look at that square that's set up in the middle of this thing. And the purpose of a sharp is to raise the pitch of the note one fret. That would be one fret closer to the body. We take a look at the flat, and the flat sort of looks like a little lowercase b, doesn't it? And again, if we take a look at the center part, it looks here marked in red. We read that almost as though it were a note. So that would be placed on a line or in a space just like a note would be. And the purpose of the flat is to lower the pitch of the note one fret. That is to say, one fret away from the body. So the way this works on the guitar and actually on the ukulele is, let's say I've got an F note here on the first fret of the first string. If I want an F sharp, I'm simply going to play at the second fret. So I have an F here, and I have F sharp. G is on the third fret, of course. So G sharp would be on the fourth fret. So we're moving one fret closer to the body. First fret for the F, second fret for the F sharp, third fret for a G, fourth fret for a G sharp. So really what we're doing is we're taking an action. If you think of it in those terms, think of it as a verb. It's easier that way. So that's what we're doing. The same would apply on our ukulele, where I would have a C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and so on and so forth. A flat works in the opposite direction. We're going that way, towards the headstock. So here, for example, I have a B on the second fret. A B flat would be on the first fret. B, B flat. Okay. Sometimes to differentiate, we might use the word natural. B natural, B flat. The word natural just is a little more specific. So that's what we're doing there. So let's take a quick peek at the guitar and we'll do our flats here, for example. I have a G on the third fret and then a G flat on the second fret. G natural, G flat. Now, those of you who are really paying attention, you'll notice that a second ago I called this F sharp. I went from F to F sharp, and then I went from G to G flat, and it's the same note, isn't it? There's a fancy word for this. It's called enharmonic. You see it down there. And so it's this thing where we have actually two ways to write and two ways to name the exact same sound. That doesn't sound any different either way. Now there's a whole bunch of fancy reasons behind all of this. I'm not going to go into that today, but you should know that it exists. So this is F sharp, or it's G flat, and it's going to be the same note. And it's that way throughout the entire scale. All of the notes have that going on. So what we didn't talk about is what do we do when we have open strings? Well, sharp is the easiest one. So if we take a look at a G, for example, it's the open third string. A G sharp, just push down to the first fret. So G, go up a fret to the first fret. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So, and then G sharp, or A rather, and then A sharp. So we have that. The other thing that we have that's more difficult is I have an open string. Here's my B, open second string, and I want to play a B flat. I can't go any lower here without retuning the string. But what I can do is I can find that same note over here on the third string at the fourth fret, and I can flat that by going to the third fret. Now all of the other strings, the flats are at the fourth fret rather. But the third, the open B, second string, third fret there. And you will usually see some reference to that in the music, but not always. Now, it's easy to get confused, right? Is that the third fret? Is that the fourth fret? Etc. Remember the enharmonic. We just talked about that. In enharmonic, I may not be able to remember an E flat like that, but I can remember a D sharp. D sharp is easy to find. And that's the enharmonic. It's the same note. So if I'm looking for a flatted open string, sometimes I go to the note below and then sharp that. So instead of trying to find an E flat, I can go to a D and just kind of translate that in my head a little bit, kind of make that jump. And that's how we do that. It's a little complicated, but it works. Now, let's talk about what these things look like when they're written out. As we're looking at this, here's our staff. It's just plain old regular staff, nothing different. Now here we have the staff and we have some notes on it. We have an F and then an F sharp. And we see the sharp sign is in front of the F. And then we have a B, and then we have a B flat. And that flat sign, again, is right in front of the note. So what that's doing is that's setting us up. That's telling us this next note is going to be sharp or this next note is going to be flat. And it's telling us what action we need to do to alter that note. So let's assume for a moment that I'm writing out some music for you, and I have notes that have all these sharps in them. It's the same stupid note over and over and over. Okay, so I get a little tired of that, and I don't want to do that anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a sharp sign at the beginning of the music, as you can see here, right over there at the beginning. And you can see that, and those sharp signs are there, and that's telling me that I have to sharp all of the Fs. You can see that square is right on the top of the line there, and all of the Cs. It's right in that C space right there, which means that every time I come across an F, every time I come across a C, you have to sharp it automatically. I'm not going to write it in. I wrote it in once. That's your reminder. So it makes my job a lot easier. It makes your job a little bit harder. Doing that, okay, we go all the way through, but it can be all of the Fs and all of the Cs no matter how high or how low. So it's not just the F on that line. It's also in the F in the space below. It's not just the C in that space. It's also the C on that first ledger line below at any range, any height. If it's an F, it'll be sharped. If it's a C, it'll be sharped. We also can see from this example a B flat. We see that flat sign in the middle line there, and that's telling me that all of the B's are going to be flatted all the way through, higher and lower. And again, makes my job easier, makes your job harder. You got to know where all those B's are. So when you're learning a new song or, just playing a piece of music, one of the things that you have to do is you have to look at the very beginning to see if there are sharps or flats there. Now, there won't be both. It'll either be sharps, all sharps, or it'll be all flats, or it'll be nothing at all. But they won't mix and match. But that series of sharps or series of flats, or even the fact that there's nothing at all, that's referred to as a key signature. That's another topic for another day. We're not going to get into it. But there are rules that apply to that. So just so that you know that at some point, you're probably going to need to learn how to do that. I hope this helps you understand just how important sharps and flats are and how they work for your guitar or for your ukulele. If you have any additional questions, please reach out. I'm only too glad to help. Thanks.